it was one of the most formative experiences of my life was those early blogging years. And I did have big plans for it, but it took so much longer to unfold. I was so grateful for the women who really spoke up and made those of us who were saying yes to everything for free for years, to finally be like, oh, like I'm being taken advantage of.
Welcome back to Smart Girl Summer. Today we're with one of my favorites, the wonderful Laura Tremaine. She's been on the show before talking about friendship and life, but today you're going to hear the behind the scenes that you haven't heard anywhere else, and you're going to get some of her favorite advice. And after we talk with Laura, of course, it's time for coaching. Today I'm giving you the one tech tool that you need to start using if you're not already using it. Final segment of the show, I'm bringing you an amusement park review because this is the summer of amusement parks for me. Like, this is what I'm doing at 47 years old. This is the life I'm living. You already know two of my boys love amusement parks, but we have a lot of trips planned this summer. I also have a trip planned with my team and a trip planned with clients. So I'm just going to give you the lowdown of where I go and what I think about it. Now, real quick, do you know what your superpower is? Do you know what your gifting is? If you have not taken my quiz, I have a 2-minute quiz. It's a super fun quiz. It'll help you discover your superpower. It'll help you discover your strengths, and it will tell you what other people wish you knew, which is really, really exciting. So go to my website, allieworthington.com. Take that superpower quiz that's on the front page of the site. It only takes 2 minutes, and you'll get a fun video from me telling you all about your superpower. Okay, without further ado, here's my friend Laura. Laura Tremaine, you are one of the smartest women I know, so of course you're on Smart Girl Summer. When did we first meet? I feel like since I have been in the online space, I have known you, whether it's Twitter or in person, somehow.
I will take that compliment from you and soak in it all week. But I think that we first met at Blistum.
I wonder what year? 2009 maybe?
It probably was, my daughter was born in 2009, so I think it was 2010.
Okay. Oh, 2010 was maybe my favorite year. Did we have Brene there that year?
Yes.
That was a good year.
It was pivotal for me. It was pivotal for me because I had only started my blog a few months before. So it was a real risk for me to go to a blog conference or online creator conference when I was such a newbie, and didn't really know anyone. I was kind of going to meet the people that I've been reading, other bloggers and things. It was a big risk for me.
Okay, I had no idea. So you weren't well connected at that point. That's how you got connected, or the beginning of it.
That was how I got connected. I mean, that's where I met people. I mean, I do feel like I was... I took advantage of the popularity of mom blogging at the time and things where I built up an audience pretty quickly is what I'm trying to say, which would be much harder to do now. Like, impossible to do now at the trajectory that I was in then. Yeah. I had a good blog name. My original blog was called Hollywood Housewife. That's catchy.
Yeah.
So I had some things going for me, but that first Blistum, and then I went to many after that, but that first one was the one that set in motion, I think, a lot of relationships and opportunities that came from meeting other women there.
Yeah, I love that. So what made you get started blogging? Did you have any idea I'm going to grow this into a huge business and a media company with books and a podcast and the whole thing?
Well, I wouldn't have called it a business, and I just was so naive at the time, but I definitely had big dreams for what I wanted to do with my writing. Mm-hmm. And I started that blog after years of working in Hollywood. So I moved to Los Angeles straight out of college wanting to be a writer. Now, I didn't necessarily want to be a TV writer or a screenwriter. I always kind of wanted to write longer form, but
Mm-hmm.
it felt like if you're going to be anywhere in the world to be around other creators, other writers, it's going to be LA. You know, I was 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I moved out here and I did work in Hollywood for 7 years. But because of the time frame, so I moved out here in 2001. In those early 2000s, all of the work in town at the time was reality TV. Reality TV was exploding. Scripted was really waning. It had to come back, of course, but like it was just a lot of things that happen in our business lives and our personal lives are subject to what's going on culturally. And for
Yeah.
me in Hollywood, it was all the work was in reality TV. So if I wanted to work, it was going to be in reality TV. So I was on the production side. I wasn't doing anything creative. I wasn't doing
Oh, that's
any
so
kind of writing.
tough. Yeah.
And so, I met my husband and we got married and wanted to start a family right away. And I did not want to be in production anymore. TV production is exhausting and it's impossible with a young family. I guess not impossible, but really hard. And so I was like, okay, I'm actually going to finally pursue writing. And I did want it to lead to books and things like that. But at the time, when mom blogging was the thing to do,
The thing.
blogging was so attractive. You could, at the time, like I already said, build an audience quickly. The instant gratification of writing a blog post. I wrote every single day for years.
Did you?
Yeah, I published every weekday. I guess I didn't publish on the weekends. I published every weekday for years, and I just cut my teeth that way, having had no writing experience prior to that. But you can see immediately what works and what doesn't, what's hitting and what's not. Like the discipline of writing every day. It was one of the most formative experiences of my life was those early blogging years. And I did have big plans for it, but it took so much longer to unfold. And it was so different than I thought. I thought, I'm going to start a blog. I'll blog for a year or two. I'll get a book deal. Like I'm on my way. And that is not how that worked.
I remember, I think I had only been blogging 2 years, and Wiley offered me a book deal to write personal branding for dummies.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, but do I want, like, am I the expert in personal brand? This is like 2009. Am I the expert? And do I want to be known as the personal branding expert forever? I don't know. And then I remember doing the numbers of how long it would take me to write this book. And I was like, working at Taco Bell would be a lot more lucrative than writing personal branding for dummies. So I'm gonna have to pass on this one. I will put my writing dreams on the shelf a little bit longer, because sometimes writing the wrong thing is way worse than not writing at all. I don't think I've ever told that story. Sorry, Wiley. I'm sure it's way different now.
well, but you were already thinking of it as a businesswoman. That's all I hear in that story, is that you did the math. I would have jumped on something like that because I was only thinking about it as a emotion story or as a prestige or an honor or an opportunity. And that is where I think some of our online work it's not cut and dry, like if you're in the corporate world and like
Yeah.
things are just a little clearer in terms of in terms of all the things, but especially in terms of like money or what your position is, what your title is, things like that. When you don't have any of that and you're sort of just, and you don't have a business background, I didn't know anything about business. And so I said yes to so many things that actually did not serve me. In a big picture way, saying yes to a lot of things, I learned a lot. And eventually I was able to sift through it and make better decisions. But it was a much longer process than it could have been. And if I had thought more like you and been like, the money does not math out here. But I wasn't thinking like that.
Forever be a dummy. Like, then I'd always be associated with for dummies. You know what I mean?
My blog was featured in the Blogging for Dummies that came out. It's funny when you said that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's very cool. Whoever they paid Taco Bell wages to write it. I'm sure was a big fan. No, I'm sure someone was very well paid to write it. The thing about the first few years, though, you kind of want to do everything. And to some degree, I think it's a good idea. Like my first 5 years in business was just throwing spaghetti against the wall and then more spaghetti. And then like, well, let me throw spaghetti at the wall again. So I became good at a lot of things. I realized the things that I was not good at all. But those things, those skills that I developed years ago from just throwing spaghetti at the wall, like I've built upon them through the years. So I look at all the things I said yes to that were ridiculous as super beneficial to where I am now, because as entrepreneurs, you were talking about how no one has a linear path. This is not point A to point B. This is point A to B, C, D, E, F, G, and Z. We get somewhere. But it also builds this great skill set and understanding and wisdom in us. I was talking to somebody recently who wanted to coach with me, and she said, I have been through 4 business coaches, and they all talk to me about mindset. I just don't want anyone to talk to me about mindset anymore. My mindset is fine. And I was saying, and I was kind of telling that story, how you really want to work with people who have a vast array of experiences so they can help you through everything. Because if it's just mindset, there's only so far mindset will take you. So for you probably said yes to a ton of stuff that at the time could have been a waste of time, but now you're probably using that experience for everything.
Well, and I was greatly appreciative of the women who were more business minded, like yourself, the people who, as blogging sort of became an industry, the people who spoke out openly about not writing for free, not working for free, knowing your worth, sharing your numbers in a way so that you can have like a true grasp on, you know, what your audience size is versus someone else. Not in a competitive way, but in like, that's how you set your rates and things like that. Because I didn't think like that, I was so grateful for the women who really spoke up and made those of us who were saying yes to everything for free for years. To finally being like, oh, like I'm being taken advantage of, or I can charge for this service or this. You know, I just wasn't thinking like that because I came into it like a lot of us do, feeling like, oh, so grateful that someone picked me, that someone reached out to me. And that's okay in the very, very beginning to feel like honored and flattered and have some gratitude around that. But then like the tipping point of like, oh no, but actually, you know, this is helping them more than it's helping me.
Totally. I remember the first Blistum, 2008. I'm on a panel with Michael and Emily Freeman. And so I make a pronouncement going, hey, we're just at the beginning of this. No one's making money off our blogs yet. And sweet little Emily Freeman was like, well, not all of us. And I was like, oh, Emily, fill us in. She's just a secret, sweet little shark over there, already setting things up. So you're right. Women talking about things and going, this is how it works. This is what it looks like. Like that's how things change. So for you, speaking of things changing, when did you feel like, oh, I kind of know what I'm doing. This is the direction I'm going. And when did you feel like you had a tipping point in your career?
Well, that's a good question because I'm not exactly sure. I mean, there were a few big moments that made me feel like, oh, I do know what I'm doing. One was when people did start to talk numbers a little bit. And I thought that I was on the lower side of numbers just because I made that assumption, because other people carried themselves like they were a big deal or something like that. And then when that it actually became a little more not popular, but like people started actually sharing some numbers, and I realized like, oh no, like I'm in this game, like I'm in it. And that did change the way I approached it. So then I stopped treating it like I'm a newbie, I don't have a business mind, all these things that I told myself, sort of getting back to mindset, which I agree with you. Mindset will only take you so far. But if you don't have the right one, then it can sink you fast.
Yeah.
And so when I started to realize, oh no, like I'm in this game, these are peers and not all like so far ahead of me. Just the realization of that changed the way I carried myself. And I actually had a blog friend tell me jokingly at a conference, like, if you just carry yourself like I made that joke about they're carrying themselves like they're a big deal.
Yeah.
And she's like, and you believed them. So if you carry yourself, not like you're a big deal in a cocky way, but like if you carry yourself like, I belong in this room, I know what I'm doing, I'm good at this, people will believe you. And so that was a turning point that's not as business minded, except that it really mattered. Mm. And then another turning point, I would say, is when I started podcasting. I was originally a co-host on Sorta Awesome, which is a show started by Meg Tietz, another OG blogger. Yep. And I had at that point really been in sort of I was in a down. I had tried to sell a book because, like I said, I just made this natural assumption that because I had a good blog, I would get a book deal. I had blog friends who were getting book deals left and right. So I thought that I was in there. It did not happen. I can see more clearly why it didn't happen. I didn't have a strong point of view. I didn't have a strong hook. My hook was, I have a blog. That's not a hook for a book deal. So I got multiple rejections. Like I went out, I pitched a book. I got a lot of rejections. I was very down about that. Like I was down on myself, like self-esteem wise. I was feeling a little directionless, but I was still blogging, not every day anymore. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I became a co-host on Sorta Awesome, and just changing mediums like was a huge turning point for everything that followed. So I learned that using my voice really enhanced my writing, like learning to use my voice on the microphone, make a point, make a joke, really helped my writing, like infused it with a whole new, like sort of fresh energy. At that point, I'd been blogging for years. Maybe things had gotten a little stale. And it also sort of made me realize, like, I kind of do want to change direction. I closed my blog at that point after starting podcasting. I closed Hollywood Housewife. Then I only podcasted for a little bit. I started a spinoff show called Smartest Person in the Room. And then when I came back to writing, it was it was a whole different thing. And then guess what? Then I did get the book deal I really wanted. Then I was able to be paid for my writing. And I really think that tipping point was just changing my medium for a little bit and still using my words, but using my voice instead of the written word. I always fancy myself a writer. I feel like my identity is a writer, but podcasting was huge for me and letting me change direction. I think I would have held on to that old blog, and maybe I even did, longer than I should have, out of sentimentality or out of fear that changing direction would be a failure. And I had to sort of really completely change what I was doing, which was moving to podcasting for a little bit, have that trajectory kind of take off. And then it did.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the lessons that I've learned, and I hear it in your story, is everything just takes a lot longer than we think it should.
God, yes.
So we go into any experience going, give me 6 months or give me a year. And a lot of that is made worse by Instagram ads of, let me show you how I made $3 million in 90 days without launching. I'll show you all my secrets. Just pay me $5,000, Well, we know how they're getting paid. They're getting paid just selling hopes and dreams and ridiculous timelines that don't actually work. So we already have the natural proclivity to go, this shouldn't take too long. Give me a year, right? Then we're inundated with those ads that make everyone else look like they're flying around in private jets and they're working 2 hours a week. And it compounds, especially on women, to make us feel like failures, like we're not getting anywhere. When did you start your podcast?
So I started 10 Things to Tell You, which is my current podcast, and the one that resulted in book deals in 2019, January of 2019. And I had stepped away from Sorta Awesome as a co-host. I'd started this sideshow like I said, called Smartest Person in the Room. That was like a project-based show. So we did like series on different topics. And then I wanted to just move to a weekly show. So I started 10 Things to Tell You. And kind of what you just said, I feel like it all built upon each other. I would not have been a successful podcaster, I don't think, had I not been writing for an audience for years beyond that. It all built on each other. I couldn't have had the success of Smartest Person in the Room and then 10 Things to Tell You if I hadn't started as a co-host on Sorta Awesome with like in a team. And then I became a solo podcaster, but I don't think I could have started there. You know what I mean? Like all of these things built upon themselves, both from a skill set point of view and also just from an opportunity point of view. I do feel like people think that they're going to be able to build an audience really quickly, whether it's on social media or on Substack or on a podcast. And I've only been able to build my audience very slowly and over time. And,
Same.
you know, I would have never have been an overnight success at any of these things.
Well, and I think it's important, just like we talked about, it's important to talk about the business aspects. It's important to talk about timelines because when we start anything, we are inundated with really great quality, right? And then there's always a gap between the kind of quality we can produce and what we see. So not only is growth slow, we're just not good at it yet because we just started. And then that is so depressing and demoralizing to people that they'll give it 6 months or if they last a year, they're out. It's why I forget what the stat is, but the vast majority of podcasts have like 13 episodes and then they're out because I think that people aren't properly warned at how long things take. And you probably won't be that good the first year. You couldn't pay me to go back and listen to my first year shows. No way. But if you want to do something, you got to be bad at it and you got to feel awkward and it has to take way longer than you want it to take before you get good. Like we now put all of my shows on YouTube. We have all year. And it has been the most humbling, difficult process on YouTube. But I told myself I would give YouTube 5 years before I pull the plug on it.
Wow.
5 years. 5 years. Because that's how long something takes. So I will keep throwing these shows on YouTube and keep paying for the editing and just cross my fingers that I will get better and better at it over time, but I'm giving it 5 years.
What has been so humbling about it? Has it been that it didn't have a natural audience there? Has it been trying to just get views? Like what is not
Well, the views are humbling. The views are very humbling because my audio audience likes audio. The YouTube audience is totally different. So essentially I'm starting from scratch on YouTube, right? Which is fine because podcasts aren't great for discoverability. YouTube is great for discoverability. So I'm just letting YouTube do its thing and trying to build organically there. I'm not pushing people to YouTube. But the tech is really humbling. I got a fancy new camera, which I'm using now. And I just told people during the first month, I don't know why I look so bad. I don't know what's wrong with this fancy new camera. Like it looks terrible. It looks like, I don't know what was wrong with the settings. So I get on a call with a representative from the camera company and I'm like, listen, I have been in the industry a long time. I know what I'm doing. This camera, there's something wrong with it. I kid you not. He said, look at the camera lens right there. Do you see anything on it? And I was like, listen, I took the cover off the camera lens. Like, don't talk down to me, pal. And he goes, do you see a little green sticker on the side of the lens? And I was like, yes. And I pulled it off and I kid you not, it was another camera cover. So it's just humbling experience after humbling experience after humbling experience.
Oh,
so I'm 6 months into my experience. I have 4.5 years left to get good at YouTube. We'll see how it goes.
Well, you're so smart to do the YouTube thing because you're right. This is where it's good in so many ways. This is where sort of podcasting is going for better or worse. But I haven't even jumped in yet. But now I'm trying to figure out if your story makes me want to jump in or makes me want to be like, I can't do it. I'm too old.
It's really humbling. It is so, so humbling. I mean, it's just what we do, and one thing that I had to fight against is because I've had success in publishing and podcasting and different things. It's very uncomfortable for me to let me go into a completely new area where I'm going to be really bad for a while and just go feel bad. This is going to be uncomfortable every week, and I'm going to look at my stats and I'm going to get sad. I even put, like, at the end of the YouTube episodes, I put bloopers in. Like, I'm doing all the things to get people to watch because there's so many bloopers. Still, it's very sad and very pitiful. But I hope in 5 years I look back and go, that was such a great thing for discoverability.
Yeah.
But it's also good for us when we've had a bit of success in different areas to put ourselves back in that area where we don't feel good and everything feels hard. Like, for me as a business coach, it helps me have even more empathy for people that I'm working with that are in the beginning of things. So I'm not just like, listen, you're just gonna have to suck it up and do it. I mean, that is basically what I say, but I say it with much more empathy now because I know how terrible it is to suck it up and do it. Because doing hard things aren't fun.
Yeah.
For you, switching that around a little bit, not a hard thing, a good thing. What are you enjoying most right now with your work?
So I'm not saying this as a promotion. I'm saying this as a true answer to your question.
Hey,
But
both is fine.
I truly love my Patreon community. So it's a paid community that is a book club, and also we have a symposium every single month where we are on Zoom together
Yeah.
and talk about a topic. We have a topic for the conversation, and I lead the conversation, and there's a bunch of people on Zoom talking through something. And this is why I love it, because I had gotten used to, after all these years, writing or speaking to just a mass faceless audience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and in the realm of cancel culture where people can very easily misstep, that is always in the back of my mind in a lot of my public things, for better or for worse. One, it's great that we're mindful of the words that we say, but it can also sometimes hinder creativity or spontaneity.
Right. Yeah.
And I felt that my public work was sometimes restrained. And in Secret Stuff is the name of my Patreon community. It's not like just you can say anything at any time. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's just I felt myself relaxing a bit more into just letting myself be a little more casual, a little less polished, a little less perfect with a group of people who want to be there. And so
okay, let me ask Patreon questions because this is really fascinating. I've never gotten into Patreon.
Sure.
How much does Patreon take every month of that? And why Patreon? Why not your own membership community?
Okay, these are good questions. There's different tiers of levels that you can sign up for, of creator tiers. I'm in Patreon Pro or something. I can't remember what it's called. It's one of the most popular ones. It takes 8%.
Okay.
And I priced my Patreon accordingly, knowing that it was going to take that percentage. And I'm on the higher side of Patreon communities. Most people have $3 or $5 a month Patreon communities.
Yep.
Mine is $7 a month. It's not the highest ever. There's some 10 and 15 out there, but it's definitely not $5, which I think is sort of the more common entry point for a lot of people who want to support their favorite creators or join their communities. I did Patreon. So I started it 4 years ago. I started it in 2020, and I mainly chose it for ease of use for my listeners or readers. A lot of people already supported other Patreon creators.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was just easier than having them log in to a whole new place. I wanted them to come to a place they sort of already were. Now, in the last 4 years, there's been more options of how there's Mighty Networks. There's a lot of different, and I've looked into some of them to change because there's things about Patreon I don't love. It is not community minded at all. I have to have a separate Facebook group in order for them to interact with each other.
Do you have that?
I do have that.
Okay.
Substack has sort of built up a lot of good bells and whistles that I think would make for a good paid community. I don't want to move everyone now, but at the time I made that decision of like, I think people are more likely to sign up and pay for something they're already either familiar with, they've heard of, they already have a login to, because when you log into your Patreon, all the creators that you support are all in one place or all in one feed. So that is why I made that decision then. And then kind of the further you get down the road, it's like hard to move everyone. Although I have considered it and researched it. But I had joined someone else who I think was with Circle, I believe. And I actually liked a lot of the features of Circle, but I was like, I don't know anyone else who's here. And I feel like I'll get forgotten. As a creator, I'll be forgotten if people have one other, place to log into. That we just don't want that. There's already too many places to log into.
You're exactly right. I support podcast on Patreon. So it would, and I like how whatever you're supporting on Patreon, everything shows up. But you're right. Mighty Networks is great, but nobody ever remembers to log into Mighty Network. So
right.
It makes sense. And it sounds like you're not offering a ton of stuff, which would make people feel like, oh, I'm not keeping up with all of the stuff and smart stuff, so maybe I need to take a break.
Well, it's funny. I get feedback. There's just so much good content out there. So if you are a fan of the podcast, for example, or anyone, and you listen to their free stuff, their weekly show, and then you're also a part of their paid community, so you're getting at least one, if not two or three pieces of content in their paid thing. Yeah. As creators, we think, oh, we need to provide enough value. They're paying for this, so we need to give them a lot of stuff. But as a consumer, of which I also am a consumer, I'm like, there's so much stuff here, I want to leave.
Yeah.
I feel
People
overwhelmed.
Feel
Yeah. They feel overwhelmed, or they feel like they'll never catch up. They feel like a weird amount of guilt about that or something. And so I have gotten, as a consumer, I've seen that. And then I've also gotten some of that feedback to try to balance, I want to provide enough value because you are paying for it. But also I don't want you to open your app, your Patreon app or your podcast app, see so much stuff from me that you just close it.
No, I think it's really smart. Okay, so right now, the last big business question. Summer 2024, what do you feel like is working for you right now? And if you had to say, here's where I think the ball is moving down the field, in the next year, here are trends I see, here are things I'm watching, what would that be? I'm putting you on the spot.
For myself or for the whole industry?
For yourself and for the industry. What is interesting to you for the industry in the future?
Well, Allie, here's some real talk.
Oh, I like
Everything that I love doing is waning.
I know.
I
me too.
secretly love Instagram. I love creating there and I love being there. They have made it impossible for creators there.
They have.
I mean, absolutely impossible. And so then it's very frustrating and I start to not love it anymore. Even though actually I would love it if it worked well. I love short form content. I love interacting with followers. I love, there's so many things I love. I love writing a meaty caption. Social media sort of replaced blogging and I didn't hate that. I loved that. That's on the wane. Podcasting, which I also love doing. It's not that podcasting is on the way necessarily, but it is so inundated. There's, again, so much good content that it's really hard to rise above the noise. I would not recommend people start a new podcast right now. It's a really difficult entry point at this exact point. I mean, I'm all for women's voices, and if you feel a deep desire to do that, I think it is an excellent medium, but it's tough competition right now in the podcasting world. So I feel like I'm telling you all the things that's not working.
No, I mean, I'm asking. I want to know. I want to know where you see things going.
I'm still doing them, but it's become a harder road than it used to be. I do think you already mentioned it, that YouTube, which has obviously been around a very long time, but it is still such a good place. I just cannot make myself do it.
So much work.
It's so much work. I don't think that video is my skill set. I don't know how to work the algorithm over there. Like, I just don't know any part of it.
Same.
It's a
Same.
lot. I did not answer your question because I am not sure. I mean, obviously video isn't going anywhere. I love writing books. I've written 2 books now. Books are not doing great. Is this supposed to be an inspirational podcast?
Listen, it's just 2 women talking business. It's just 2 women talking business. Summer 2024. This is where we are.
It's where we are. I don't know how to answer this. I wish I had a better answer to be like, this is what is working, but
We just don't know.
we just don't know. I want to keep doing the things that I love doing. I'm not going anywhere on Instagram. Like I said, this might be another reason I love my paid community, to be honest with you, is because it is working. Now, it didn't grow exponentially in a way that I kind of wanted it to. I took a pause from my podcast to write my second book and was really hopeful at that time that my income from my paid community would make up for the ad revenue that I was losing by pausing my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It did not. It's hard to grow a paid community, but I think the work that I'm doing there, it's definitely going to lead to something else. I don't know if it's a new book or if it's just continuing to sharpen my skills in, I like leading a Zoom meeting with 50, 60 people every other week is a different kind of skill set.
Yeah.
So I'm keeping on with those things that I enjoy and that I think are worth doing, but none of them are hitting. I don't know if that's they're not hitting. Like the status quo is fine, but they're not, all of these things are not growing at the rate they used to grow.
Well, and you're illustrating the point that we made that things never grow as fast as we want them to grow.
Right.
So
that's true.
Here's good news about Instagram. You probably already know this. They have announced, I think because of TikTok, because people could get so much growth on TikTok, that they're changing the algorithm. So small creators on a certain topic are going to start to be boosted. And they want Instagram to go back to that model that it was in the beginning, because TikTok is just eating their lunch, because people can start a TikTok. So I think there's hope for that for Instagram. You're right. The video isn't going anywhere. I think about, you said, in those Zoom calls in your private community, you're getting really good on camera. Mm-hmm. That's kind of with my 5 years. I think even if my YouTube channel has 500 subscribers in 5 years, I'm going to get really good on camera. Yeah. Whereas at the beginning of being on camera, whenever I looked into a camera lens, my brain went blank and I went just, so a lot of it's just getting our reps in. But everything you're talking about, it makes perfect sense, because it is the whole frustration of things never working as fast as we want them to. But you'll look back on this phase of your career and go, oh, I can see what was growing and I can see what was brewing. Okay, we could talk for hours. We could. You're going to be back on Smart Girl Summer every summer. Just hold it in your calendar for me. We know where to find you. So instead of ending there, end with encouragement for women who maybe they're in their first 3 years and things haven't grown as fast as they want to. What advice and encouragement would you give them?
Well, I kind of want to leap off of what I just said, going back to a heart-centered place. When I started blogging, it was just out of love. I never expected to make money. I just wanted to try this new thing. I wanted to be creative. In the last decade and a half, there's so much business advice out there. And those of us who want to be, following all the rules, and there is so many ways that you can get hooked into how to go viral, how to make $1 million, all these things. Some of that's good advice, and some of it is all business all the time. And I just don't think that you can have a success if you don't have a heart and a passion behind it. And it's easier to take a class on how to, game the algorithm than it is to kind of go inward and really look at your work and look at your business and be honest about what's not working and be honest about what direction you need to change, even if it feels super vulnerable. My first book was called Share Your Stuff, I'll Go First, about, and a huge part of that book is about how sharing myself on the internet, being very vulnerable on the internet, led to, a lot of open doors in my life. Now, you don't have to share yourself on the internet, but whatever your business is, to share yourself in an open and honest way is always going to lead to more connection and more like fulfillment than just clocking and tracking your sales numbers.
Amen to that. Okay, yes, every summer you're on. We're just going to put repeating annual invites for this episode. We're going to talk business every summer. Thank you for coming on the show. We'll put all of your links in the show notes so everyone, if they've missed out on something, they can
This was so
follow you there.
fun, Allie. Thank you for
friend.
having me.
You're welcome. How great was Laura, right? She is ultimate smart girl. Okay, let's get on to the coaching part of the show. This is about a tech tool that you need to use. I don't talk a lot about tech tools, but here it is. If you haven't started using it, I need you to start. It's ChatGPT. Now, when I talk to people, they either haven't tried it at all or they really love it. If you haven't tried it at all, do not feel intimidated. Don't feel overwhelmed. It's super easy to use. I have an app on my phone with it. I use it on my laptop. I use it now instead of Google when I want information because it literally has the internet's information already in it. If I want to know how to cook something, I ask it. If I'm reading a research study and it's confusing, I will link it or upload it to ChatGPT and say, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. I recently had lab work done. I've told you I am on this health journey. So I've had tons of lab work done for all sorts of different things to understand why I feel like I am, to monitor things. I found out I was anemic, for instance. And before I even talked to my doctor, I uploaded my lab work and asked ChatGPT all the questions, and it walked me through what everything meant and what I needed to be concerned about and if something was dangerous, and also what the protocol would be to turn that lab result around. So ChatGPT right now can even tutor your kids in school. Like, I'm not talking about telling them the answer, like really tutor them, like talk back and forth. You can put the computer screen down and angle it at your math problem, and it can walk your child through like a tutor, like a coach, how to fix it. It's really exciting time. So if you don't know how to do something around the house or at work, ask it. It is wonderful. It's not perfect, but it is going to help you excel. And I feel like AI right now is the way it was for me when I went from having to look everything up in the encyclopedia to the beginning of the internet, right? Like, this is our next step up. So if you haven't signed up yet, sign up for a free account. Get familiar with it. It's not going away, and it is super, super helpful. So go to openai.com and you can sign up for an account. Okay, recommendation. This is theme park summer. The first theme park of the summer that we went to was Hershey Park, and I wasn't sure of what to expect. I mean, it's named after a Hershey bar, right? The Hershey Company is chocolate. There are so many things to do there. I was really impressed with this park. You can go in and there's a chocolate fountain and you can see how chocolate's made. We didn't do any of that because we literally had 8 hours in the park. We had 6 hours in the car that day, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, and 8 hours at the park. So we skipped a lot of things. However, there is a water park there. There is a zoo in Hershey Park. There are tons of roller coasters, big scary rides, which are my favorite, little kid rides. We did 11 coasters in those 8 hours. You definitely want to get the express passes at Hershey Park. I don't know if it's always busy. When we were there, school was still in session. We went there the first day of June-ish, somewhere around in there. And it must have been everyone in Pennsylvania and Maryland send your middle school and high school group to Hershey Park. We heard one of the boys saying that he had only ridden one ride in 6 hours. That is terrible. That is unacceptable. So if you're going to go, get the express passes or fast passes or whatever they call it there. But it's a delightful park. We saw otters. We saw all sorts of animals. We rode the coasters. There were great snacks. It was super clean. And Hershey, PA, I only know what I know from driving through. Absolutely adorable. The light fixtures have little like Hershey Kisses caps on them with little Hershey tags. Adorable. I wish I could spend more time there. If you've ever wanted to go to Hershey Park, I recommend it. I really think it's great. So That is my first amusement park review of the summer. I think I did okay. I don't think I'm going to quit my day job and become an amusement park influencer. But if I do, we both know this is where I started. But I am so glad you're here. Thank you for being with me this week. Thank you for investing in yourself, because an investment in you and your spiritual health, your emotional health, and your professional success benefits everyone. I believe in what's inside of you. I believe in your dreams, and I know you're making an impact on this world for good. That's why you're here every week. You're learning something that's going to help you impact the world, impact your home, your community, your city, your town, right? You are following the calling that God has on your life. And by learning, by growing all the time, by overcoming challenges, by getting new information and investing in yourself, you are partnering with Him to bring your future to life, because God has created you to stand strong and bring something special and unique to this world that only you can bring. So keep stepping up, keep showing up, keep loving well, because you know the truth. You cannot break a woman who gets her strength from God. I love to get to coach and equip you every week. I hope you have a great day, and I'll be back next Monday. Okay. I feel like AI blah. I'm out.